what just one average family in one average home requires in goods and services is the incentive force which powers the United States of America as the country possessing the highest standard of living in the world.
In this country, it doesn't make any difference where you were born.
With a little hard work, you can improve your own situation over time and build something better to leave your kids.
This is the American dream.
The American dream is the beating heart of our national identity. We pride ourselves on the idea that with enough hard work and determination, anyone in this country can find success. Our tech sector is the envy of the world, attracting the best and brightest from everywhere.
Google wouldn't be what it is without people coming from around the world.
Immigrants from Sundar Pichai to Elon Musk have achieved unimaginable levels of success in this country. A record-breaking 5.5 million new business applications were filed in 2023. Yet, tens of millions of Americans feel left behind at the gas pump, when shopping for groceries, when rent is due.
Sadly, the American dream is dead.
Stagnant wages, soaring home prices, and income inequality have more than 3/4 of Americans feeling pessimistic about their children's future.
Young people have every reason to be enraged, and every day it is speedballed in their face that they are failing.
The economy can seem abstract, but to most voters, it is the most important issue, and it decides the outcome of election after election, including the one coming up a few weeks from now. So let's debate. David Leanhart.
The promises that we got, a beautiful dawn for all Americans, have come true only for the affluent.
Tyler Cowen.
Intergenerational mobility has not declined a lot for native-born Americans.
Bhaskar Sunkara.
The noble dream of liberty and justice for all has been frustrated by the inequalities in class society.
Katherine Mangu-Ward.
We cannot let government collaborate with business to wreck the engine of the market.
Is the American dream alive and well?
And now, introducing the Free Press founder, Barry Weiss.
Good evening, Washington, D.C. I am so happy to be here tonight. Yeah! I am so happy to be here in D.C. tonight, or as the old saying goes, Hollywood for ugly people. But I'm seeing some beautiful faces here tonight. Now listen, guys, I know people are worried about the election. Maybe you're thinking about the lesser secondary debate happening later tonight. But remember, folks, it doesn't matter who wins. All that matters is that Nancy Pelosi gets to keep insider trading. We have an unbelievable evening ahead, but before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank the organization that I have been involved with since college and that I'm so proud to still be associated with today. And that is the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. Tonight's debate and the series of these America debates that we're putting on would not be possible without the generosity of our friends at FIRE. If you believe, like we do at the Free Press, that free speech should be defended for everyone, including for those you disagree with or that you're offended by, including maybe Robbie, then FIRE is an organization that should be on your radar. At the Free Press, we believe passionately in open dialogue and in the power of persuasion. And that is the objective of tonight's debate, to persuade you. So let's get started. If you drive 15 minutes from where we're sitting right now, you'll find yourself in the heart of Georgetown, where in 2021, the median household income was $190,000. And it's surely only gone up since then. There you'll find gorgeous tree-lined streets, I'd love to live there, and politicians and power brokers schmoozing over $12 lattes. But just a few miles away, in Anacostia, a majority black neighborhood, the median household income in 2021 was about $29,000. There, the streets are dotted with rundown apartment buildings and vacant lots. This glaring disparity, which of course is not unique to DC, but can be found in cities and towns across this country, is just one reason why so many Americans are doubting our foundational myth. And that myth, of course, is the American dream, the idea that with hard work and determination, anyone can achieve a middle-class security. Anyone can own a home, start a family, and provide the children they raise with better circumstances than the one they grew up in. Now, on the one hand, as you saw in that video, our economy is the envy of the world. We are the richest country in the world, leading the pack when it comes to innovation. And more people choose to move here for economic opportunity than to any other country in the world. And yet, everywhere you look in this country, it seems to me that there's a growing sense of gloom and of pessimism, a sense that you can work hard, play by the rules, even go to college, and still end up saddled with debt and unable to afford the things that our grandparents took for granted, like owning a home. Americans were told that higher education would be their ticket to the good life. But now, there's a generation saddled with more than $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. Americans were told that free trade would make everyone prosper, but try telling that to the more than 4.5 million people who lost their manufacturing jobs since NAFTA took effect. Perhaps all of that's why a July Wall Street Journal poll found that only 9% of Americans say that they believe that financial security is a realistic goal. Only 8% said that they believe that a comfortable retirement is possible for them in their future. Now, do those numbers reflect actual reality, or are they just negative vibes? Tonight, we're gathered here to debate, is the American dream alive and well, or is it dying? Or perhaps already dead. Now, in order to know which side presented the better argument, in order to know which side changed your mind, we need you to tell us where you sit before the debate begins. So I'm gonna ask you for the first time tonight to pull out your phone, not to get on OnlyFans or to text, but to vote. Look at the number right there on the screen and text the words, vote 1. I'm moving to the side so you can see the whole thing. Vote 1. And you are gonna text the letter A to vote that yes, the American dream is alive and well, or you're gonna text B to vote that no, the American dream is not alive and well. And while you guys do that, I am going to invite the brilliant 4 people that are here tonight to debate the proposition. Arguing that yes, the American dream is alive and well is economist Tyler Cowen. Tyler is a professor of economics at George Mason University and faculty director at the Mercatus Center there. He also writes the absolutely essential blog, Marginal Revolution. Please welcome Tyler Cowen. Now, joining Tyler tonight is none other than Katherine Mangu-Ward, editor-in-chief of the libertarian Reason magazine and co-host of the Reason Roundtable podcast. Please welcome Katherine Mangu-Ward. Okay, we got a lot of Reason people in the house, so give it up for the next debater from the other side, arguing that no, the American dream is not alive and well, is David Leanhart, senior writer at the New York Times and author of Ours Was the Shining Future, the story of the American dream. David has also won a Pulitzer Prize for commentary. Please welcome to the stage, David Leanhart. Thank you so much, David. Last but not least, joining David arguing no for tonight's proposition is Bhaskar Sunkara. Bhaskar is the president of Nation magazine and the founding editor of Jacobin. He is the author of The Socialist Manifesto, The Case for Radical Politics in an Era of Extreme Inequality. Please welcome Bhaskar Sunkara. Okay, now, very briefly, let me explain the rules. Each debater is going to give an opening 5-minute statement explaining their position on the motion. Then we'll get into it. We'll have time for rebuttals. Then at the very end, there will be 2-minute closing statements. We're going to start with, let me look, we're going to start with David, then go to Katherine, then Bhaskar, and then Tyler. And then at the end of the night, you're going to get to vote again. And this is very crucial. the team that changes your minds, the team that moves more audience members in the room, that team is going to be the winner of tonight's debate. Okay, let's take a look at the initial polling results. Thank you, Isaac. Is the American dream alive and well? Wow, 71% of this audience believes that the answer is yes. And 29 believes the answer is no. So that's where we stand. Let's see who can change the most minds over the course of this evening. Are you ready? Be it resolved, the American dream is alive and well. We'll start with David Leanhart. Thank you. You can go right there. Yeah.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you all for coming out. This is exactly the kind of event that we need more of in this country today, which is real disagreement and respectful disagreement. So I just want to start by saying how much I respect Tyler, Tyler's an old friend of mine, and how much I respect Katherine. I'm a reader of reason, and just how happy I am to be here debating against them tonight, and with Bhaskar, I'm a reader of Jacobin as well. So we're debating the American dream. So I think we should start by understanding what the American dream is. It turns out I brought the definition. The American dream is a phrase that was invented in a book almost 100 years ago. It came out during the Great Depression, the depths of it. Before then, the American dream as we know it was never used in newspapers. You can look it up. So here's the definition of American dream from a book called Epic of America by James Truslow Adams. It is that American dream of a better, richer, and happier life for all our citizens of every rank, which is the greatest contribution we have as yet made to the thought and welfare of the world. We being the United States there. Greater, richer, happier life for all our citizens of every rank, the greatest contribution the United States has made to the world. Our question is, how well are we living up to that dream? Is the American dream in good condition today? Our case is no, it is not. So let's start with the economic data. You're probably familiar with the economic data. Wealth growth for most Americans has been very slow for decades. If you're under age 40, you don't need to look at statistics. You just need to try to buy a house. It is very difficult to do so in this country if you didn't have the benefit of amassing wealth in earlier generations. Income growth in this country for most Americans has been very slow for decades. The signature study was in the academic journal Science by a team led by Raj Chetty and Harvard University. It found that an American child born in 1940 had a 92% chance of out-earning his or her parents. A child born in 1980 had only a 50% chance of out-earning his or her parents. Now, you are going to hear dueling statistics from our worthy opponents tonight. They're going to offer their own economic statistics. I would tell you most of the economic statistics are on our side of the debate. Barry put some of them on the screen beforehand. Look at the academic studies, look at the government's data. Income has been growing slowly. I would also tell you that dueling economic statistics are incredibly boring and difficult to follow. And so if you throw up your hands at the economic statistics you hear from us and the economic statistics you hear from our opponents, I would encourage you to look at other things. Look at other measures of well-being besides economics. Remember, James Truslow Adams' definition wasn't just about money. Yes, it included money, richer, but it was a better, richer, happier life for all. So let's look at what Americans are saying about whether the American dream is alive and well. They are saying it's not. It has been almost 20 years since most Americans said the country was on the right track. Polls about whether people think the economy is good consistently find most saying it is not. Later tonight, you will probably be watching another debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Do Donald Trump and J.D. Vance think the American dream is alive and well? Do Kamala Harris and Tim Walz say the American dream is alive and well? None of them do. Those are the candidates who voters have picked to represent them because most Americans think the American dream is not alive and well. I think we should trust the people on this question. Then there are measures of social well-being that don't depend on what people say, but how their lives are. Think about the trends over the last 30 or 40 years. Think about what you've heard about loneliness in this country. Think about what you've heard about mental health in this country. Think about what you've heard about the declining birth rate, which is people making a statement about whether they have faith in the future. Think about the declining marriage rate, the declining percentage of American children who are growing up with two parents, the rising diabetes rates, the number of people we have behind bars. All of these social measures suggest that well beyond the economic statistics, the American dream is not alive and well. And then there is the single best measure of well-being in any society, which is how long do people live, life expectancy. In 1980, the United States had a typical life expectancy for a high-income country, similar to Europe, similar to rich countries in Asia. For the last 15 years, the United States has had the single lowest life expectancy of any rich country in the world, lower than every country in Western Europe, lower than South Korea, lower than Japan, lower than Canada, lower than Australia. It's not even that close anymore. No matter what set of statistics you look at, it is clear that the American dream is not alive and well. Despite all this, I am actually an optimist about our country. I am an optimist about America's potential. I think we live in the best country in the world. I think the American dream can be alive and well. But to fix our problems, we have to admit them. Is the American dream alive and well? No. Can we make it so? Yes. Thank you.
I want to tell you a little story to start out. I hear that's best practice in these sorts of debates. It's about a baby. He's born a year after his immigrant parents arrive in the United States. He grows up. His high school classmates name him most likely to succeed. He believes deeply and sincerely in principles that would get him imprisoned or worse in many nations around the world. Here in America, he turns his ideas into a thriving entrepreneurial venture. He is sought out for his wisdom and skill, and they even put him on one of those 40 under 40 lists. His name is Bhaskar Sunkara, ladies and gentlemen. We're so lucky. We're so lucky to have him here with us. Obviously, the fact that we are joined here on stage tonight by the literal personification of the American dream is not enough evidence that the American dream is alive and well. But he's not an outlier. So, between 70 and 80% of Americans consistently tell pollsters, depends on the pollsters, et cetera, but that they have achieved the American dream or are on their way to achieving it. Getting 3/4 of Americans to agree on anything is pretty impressive. I don't think 3/4 of us are going to agree on much tonight. But when they're asked what is meant by the American dream, those Americans say freedom of choice in how to live. Material well-being is a part of the picture, with home ownership and retirement and stuff like that in the list. But Americans do not think the American dream is about wealth per se, not their own, and crucially, as I think this will come up later, not how theirs compares to anyone else's. Freedom of choice in how to live. As it happens, those poll respondents unwittingly did stumble on the same definition of the American dream that we heard earlier from a century ago. There's another formulation in that same essay that I actually really like. He says, "It is not a dream of motor cars and high wages merely, but a dream of a social order in which each man and each woman shall be able to attain to the fullest stature of which they are innately capable and be recognized by others for what they are, regardless of the fortuitous circumstances of birth or position." 1931, really concise work from those guys. It's easy to lose sight of how rich in choices our lives are today, how many barriers and filters that would have been imposed by scarcity or accidents of birth have fallen away. I want to take just a quick minute to rehearse stuff you already know, because our brains have this glitch where we take gains for granted and we are prone to exaggerate the horrors of potential losses. So in the 100 years since that essay was written, we have seen an explosion in the possible configuration of romantic and professional and economic and personal life for Americans. The abundance of options for who we marry, how we make families, where we live, what jobs we do, what we do for fun, where we travel, what we eat, all of this is truly miraculous. Those tempted by a declinist narrative should remind ourselves that the facts about the real heart of the American dream do not match the despair. Again, according to Americans, freedom of choice in how to live. This debate, by its very nature, as we have already heard, is going to be statistic-tastic. There's just going to be a ton of statistics, and we are very sorry. I'll save you some trouble in parsing those statistics. Some stuff is getting worse. Tyler and I think that the stuff that is getting better is more relevant to this referendum. Bhaskar and David think the opposite, and I will make it even simpler for you. We are right. They are wrong. I'm being ridiculous, of course. I am lucky enough to be paired with one of the smartest, most creative, most scrupulous economists working today, so get ready for him to swoop in with some real bangers when it comes to the facts and figures. The American dream is not a dream of high wages and motor cars merely, but high wages and motor cars don't hurt. A lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is how to protect and further the American dream, something that Tyler and I want to do too. It is, of course, in some danger, the way that rare and beautiful things so often are, from malice or ham-handedness. But to talk about ways that some people are left out begs the question. We've already won. The American dream is alive, it is real, and it is spectacular. If Bhaskar felt that the way that I told his life story didn't match his lived experience, I am very sorry. But just as it was shockingly rude of me to presume to know if Bhaskar feels that he has achieved the American dream, so true we should be wary of those who rush to pronounce the American dream dead or ailing simply because their preferred political and socioeconomic order is not currently ascendant. Not when so many Americans are exercising their freedom of choice in how to live every day and say that for them, the dream is within reach.
Bhaskar.
All right, I wish my mom was here for Catherine's introduction. She would have loved that. I do believe that the American dream should exist for more people. I think it's fading. And I think it's predicated not just on this idea of material progress and social mobility, but I think it's something that we owe to the world. You know, it's not a distinctly American idea. There's a reason why the mass working class movements in places like Europe in the 19th century admired a country without the leftovers of feudalism and aristocratic privilege holding people back. The American idea embodied something universal. That's why we should be concerned that the American dream is fading. It's of consequence not just to the citizens of our own country, but to our legacy to the world. Since it's just a broad ethos, we can't measure the American dream in empirical terms. It has to live inside the hearts of ordinary citizens who feel like they're part of a project that's rooted in both their individual advancement and national advancement as a whole. So like David said, to us, it's clear that the American dream is dead or dying today because Americans say it's dead. Only 27% of people polled earlier this year said that the American dream still holds true. Just 13 years ago, it was double that number. This doesn't reflect just increasing cynicism in general. A majority of Americans say that the American dream once held true but doesn't anymore. On its own terms, the debate should be over. But since we're already here, we have some time to kill until the debate. I just want to touch briefly on why it's the case and just a few of the solutions that might be done to revive it, because I think we all share the goal that the American dream should be alive and well. So the polling from earlier this year correlates very closely to both income and class. Income and education, close proxies for class. So among Americans who don't have four-year degrees, which is a much bigger slice of the population than maybe most of us in the room think, it's only 22%. So I consider this a distinctly working class problem. Americans as a whole are wealthier than ever, but if we want to find out why they don't feel that way, we have to think about both disparity and social mobility. David already cited, I think, the definitive study on this question of social mobility by Raj Shetty and his team at Harvard. It's dropped from around 90% for children born in 1940 to around 50%, the chance that they'll actually have higher wages than their parents. He says that this is rooted more, though, in income distribution rather than reduced growth rates. In that study, he says that if you go to the growth rates in the 1940s or 50s, you get up to, the chances go up to 62%. Whereas if you adjust the income distribution, the number goes to around 82%. So it is mostly a question of economic income distribution rather than just growth, though of course, obviously we need growth to maintain a thriving standard of living for people. As David mentioned, the gap in life expectancy between rich and poor has also widened considerably. And we could add to this a pretty basic point that most Americans take for granted, that a kid growing up in a wealthy area is going to have a widely inferior life outcome to one growing up in a poor one. This is all the reasons for the sort of pessimisms that ordinary people have. And I think many of these things are actually solvable. By some measures, the United States has the worst rate of social mobility of any rich country. This problem of mobility is compounded by social welfare, owing to the fact that our poorly designed welfare state, which is both, I'll agree with the libertarians here, expensive, complicated, and also unable to deliver goods as well as universal welfare states in Europe that offer things like childcare for new families, guaranteed national health care, free vocational and trade schools. All in all, you'd be better off living the American dream in Norway than you would in America. And here's one key difference between the US and Northern Europe. In 1983, over 20% of Americans belonged to a union. That number is now 10%. That number in Denmark and Norway is around between 67 and 70%. A majority of Americans say that trend is bad for our country, and surely that shapes some of their perceptions of the future. Beyond persistent poverty, the loss of good union jobs, particularly manufacturing, have fueled social ills in our communities. So I'm out of time, so I'll just name a few. Our country has 110,000 overdoses a year. We have a huge epidemic of alcohol abuse and problems stemming out of that totally goes unaddressed in the media. This is the despair that a huge portion of our country, particularly those from working class backgrounds, face every day. And the American dream can't be real if it's just real for a few charismatic, aspirational immigrants. It has to be real for people who built the material wealth of this country over many, many generations. Thank you.
I'm pleased that 71% of you recognize the American dream is alive and well. Personally, I'm very honored to be here with my wife, who has lived the American dream. She grew up in the Soviet Union, where she had no freedom of religion, no freedom of speech, and was afraid of being kicked out of university because it was stamped Jewish in her passport. She came here with an advanced degree in linguistics, and the first job she had was selling donuts in Pentagon City Mall, because a linguistics degree is not in every way practical. Before I met her, she was out-earning me. Somehow, miraculously, this happened. But this is just one of many, many cases. Let me just say a bit about the numbers. So when it comes to measuring intergenerational mobility, the other side of the debate, what they're telling you is not true, and it's not about dueling studies. First, the best studies we have, published last year in the premier journal of the economics profession, Intergenerational Mobility, has been constant. But those studies underrate it. What they do not count is the people who came from Soviet Union or Mexico or Haiti and earn more here. If you put those numbers into the studies, which of course we should do, the American dream, as measured through intergenerational mobility, has risen radically, numerically, as the number of immigrants we're taking in has increased. Just some simple numbers, and these are not a few charismatic immigrants. We have a few with us. This is the median household income for Bolivians. Most Bolivian immigrants to the US not coming from wealthy families, $87,000 a year. Albanians, a country ravaged by communism. Basically, hardly anyone had wealth. Median household income in the US, $85,000 a year. Iranians, $96,000. Filipinos, $101,000. These are medians, not just a few charismatics. Indian Americans, this could be the highest number ever for any group. It is $152,000 coming from a very, very poor country. Individuals who came to America and made better lives for themselves. I work with a great number of young people through a program called Emergent Ventures. It's over 800 winners now, and I actually have met or talked to most of those people. They're from all over the world. Every day I'm talking to them. It's just stunning to me how many of them want to come to the United States. I will tell you, I have written so many letters for O1 visas, and there's a reason for that. They know what they are doing, and it's stunning to me how few say, oh, could you help me get into Denmark? I love Denmark. Oh, by the way, Haitians, and you know, they don't eat cats, just to be clear. Median household income, $66,000. What do you think it is in Haiti? That is the American dream. A lot of the American dream is safety. This country, it is still too dangerous, but if you look at data, violent crime is down 49% since 1993, and over time, that means fewer people in our prisons. There are now drugs to combat obesity. We were number 2 in the world with COVID vaccines. For free speech, the United States is a top country. And just the matter that if you come to the US, you have 50 different states you can live in. There's so much choice, different lifestyles. There's Amish, Orthodox Jews, hippies, LDS, Beverly Hills, Northern Virginia, suburban, and you go eat Chinese food with David Leonhardt. I don't know if any other country has that. That's a big part of our personal freedom, that unmatched choice and diversity that just the world knows most of all is fully realized here. You know, it's a lot of economic myths, but just to be clear, inequality has been reversing since at least 2019. Democratic pundit Matt Yglesias recently tweeted, quote, "It's very underappreciated that wage inequality has been falling." This is confirmed by other researchers. Center for American Progress, a left-leaning think tank, recently published a piece, "Wealth of Americans is historically high. Millennials are accumulating wealth just fine." You'll hear the opposite. The numbers don't bear that out. Things are not perfect. If you look at levels of consumption, US is ahead of all European countries. If you look at median household income, we're ahead of everyone but Luxembourg. Personal freedom, your ability to have the life you want to have. So yes, it's right now 71% with this group. Let's try to get that up to 81, 91%. Thank you all.
Okay, thanks to all of you. I want to start with what's going to happen in about 45 minutes, and I promise everyone will be out of here by then, because I know this is DC and you'd rather kill yourself than miss the debate, which is this. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are going to disagree about just about everything tonight, assuming they actually have a debate and get into policy. The thing that they will agree on is the thing that came up already in this conversation, which is the declinist narrative. The idea that things are getting worse. Donald Trump probably won't use the phrase American carnage, but that's sort of the vibe. And Kamala Harris, of course, is trying to convince us of her joyous vibes, but the whole candidacy is based on the idea that she can turn things around. And I'll put it to you guys first, if the American dream is alive and well, why is this narrative so seductive? Why are both sides, so to speak, if there are even sides anymore in American political life, why are we drawn to the idea that things are in decline? Why do things feel so bad for so many people? Are they just dumb?
I wouldn't actually listen to politicians about everything. When you ask people in other contexts, there's a recent poll from the Archbridge Institute done in conjunction with University of Chicago, and I quote, "Most Americans, 77%, that's better than our 71, believe they have more or about the same opportunities as their parents." Thousands of people polled. So Americans as a whole, we're a bit schizophrenic, like many cultures, but we are pretty forward-looking, pretty positive, pretty hopeful about the future, and we are going to make sure those hopeful expectations are validated.
Yeah, and I would just add, you know, they're selling something. They're not going to run on everything's fine, let's just go with it, guys. They're going to run on, wow, things are worse than they've ever been, and only I can save you. And I think, you know, of course they are channeling real discontent. Tyler and I are not arguing there are no problems in America, and they should run on fixing problems. But I think the despair is a sales pitch, and we should understand it as such.
Let me just put let me put some numbers on maybe the despair. In 1964, 70% of households in America were supported by a single income, which is a pretty astonishing number. Today, the majority of American families, and I'm sure this is in David's book, require dual incomes to manage even basic living expenses. 1964, the average annual cost of a four-year college degree was around $1,000, or about $10,000 in 2024 dollars. Now the average annual cost of a four-year degree is over $30,000. Bhaskar, David, do these numbers, and I'm sure there are a million more, represent the degradation of the American dream?
I think the primary number that we should look at is the rates of unionization, the fate of manufacturing jobs, and the disproportionate damage that's done to some communities in the United States. And I think this fuels some of the narrative of decline. I think if you just look on the basis of consumption, some Americans could get by if they consume at the levels they were consuming in the 1950s or 60s, enjoy less choice in their lives. They could survive with one income, and with the cost of childcare, a lot of Americans do for many of their, the prime earning years. A lot of couples do that. So when we look at these stats, I think it's worth acknowledging that the United States is still a very dynamic economy. We're growing. I think, weathered the last few years better than many of our peers in Europe. I think both the Obama, Trump, and Biden both did a good job avoiding some of the austerity that we saw in Europe. So I think that it's not all doom and gloom, but we have to look particularly at the impact of people on the lower end of our distributional scale, people whose, yes, they might have in certain cases higher pre-tax income than in Europe, but they don't have the same social wage that European workers have, and they don't have the same level of union protections and other support. We don't have the same policies like they enacted in Germany to prevent job shedding of some of those manufacturing jobs.
David,
at root, your question is, are Americans grouchy? I think.
Yeah.
And yes, Americans are grouchy. And yeah, you can find a poll that asks the question in just the right way that suggests they're not. But just, are you going to believe that one poll or your lying eyes, right? Look around. Americans are grouchy. If you look at the main way Gallup asked the question, the main way Pew asked the question, the main way any pollster asked the question, Americans are grouchy. And that is why we're going to hear that at the debate. Because those politicians are responding rationally to the incentives before them. The American people are unhappy, and so the people that they are going to vote for reflect that. And at the end of the day, I would say, are we going to tell people, you know what? You're wrong to be unhappy. You really need to cheer up. Or are we basically going to say, hey, we respect your own assessment of your life and this country, right? And what my attitude is, we should respect what people are saying about their own life and the state of this country, and we should say, it's not okay, it's not good enough, we should do better.
But I think a lot of the division in this debate comes down to sort of compared to what, right? Tyler got up and spoke about his wonderful wife who was deprived of every opportunity in the Soviet Union because she had Jewish in her passport, right? And compared to that, America is incredible. You guys are sort of comparing it to, well, Bhaskar pointed to some of the socialist countries in Europe. So isn't that an aspect of it?
This is why I started with James Truslow Adams' definition. He says better, richer, happier. And he kind of elides what he means. But if you read the full passage, and I think if you just think about it, better, richer, happier means your own life over time becomes better, richer, and happier. Your kids can expect to live a better, richer, happier life than you did, and your grandkids certainly will. And I thought it was really telling, Tyler and Katherine, that all of your examples were about immigrants, right? It's how you started, and Tyler, much of your time was look at these statistics about how it's better to be an immigrant who moves here than living in another country.
Everyone's an immigrant here, or descendant of immigrants.
It is better to live in the United States than in most of the world. We concede that. If our thing was the American dream is alive and well for people who've moved here from poorer countries, sign us up for yes. But when you look at statistics about people who have lived in this country from birth and whose parents have lived in this country, you can't tell those happy stories about how much better and richer, happier life is. Yes, immigrants are doing great in this country. My grandfather did great. Your parents did great. Tyler's wife is an inspiring story. These are wonderful stories.
But aren't those the stories of every single American?
No, they are not. They originally were. But most Americans aren't immigrants. Only a small percentage of Americans are immigrants. So are immigrants doing well? Yes, immigrants are doing much better than they were doing. Are most Americans enjoying a better, richer, happier life? They're not. That's why life expectancy is now the worst of any rich country. That's why loneliness is so bad. That's why our birth rate is down. That's why our marriage rate is down. You think about these broad statistics, and they are the ones that went unanswered from our original case.
But David, I'm probably the oldest person on this stage. I remember 1969 quite well. Life then was much worse. We haven't even brought up gay individuals, trans issues, women's rights, the immense, and I do mean immense, degree of progress on all of those. And that right there covers well over half of the United States, whether immigrants or from other places. I lived with my parents. I know what their lives were like, their opportunities compared to mine. When my father was 30, he was bankrupt because he bought a pet store and it didn't work out. I've had much better opportunities than he did. Forget about whatever I may or may not have done with them. It's not close for people who were born here. You see it in the numbers. And if you look at, do we have full employment? Are we investing in the stock market? Are we working hard? Are we innovating? Are we world leaders in major areas? Are we creating the new highly valuable companies? And all of those doing areas, put the immigrants aside, Americans are kicking ass.
So to use your framing,
the best in the world.
To use your framing, we're not arguing that everything is worse. I don't doubt that your life is better than your dad's was. But why is it that the United States now has the lowest life expectancy of every rich country in the world? Why are Americans so angry?
A Japanese-American woman has a higher life expectancy than a woman born in Japan. If you adjust for different demographic features, our life expectancy is fine, right?
You got to do a lot of statistical adjusting to make the American life expectancy look
Not that much.
It is the lowest of any rich country in the world.
A Swedish American has better health than a Swede in Sweden.
A Swedish American is, but an American does not have a better health than a Swedish Swede.
Okay, I'm saving you two from yourselves.
Swedish Americans and Japanese Americans are American Americans, and that's our argument. At least
but of course they are. But when you put it all together, the United States still has the lowest life expectancy of any rich country in the world by a lot. It didn't used to be. Why is that?
Do you want to address that?
It's something we need to fix. If you look at what have we done in the biomedical area the last 5 years, COVID vaccines,
Ozempic. Come on.
Which is driven by American purchasing power, immunology against cancer, statins for heart issues, much better cardiac surgery, in so many areas, in health, in public health. We have now suddenly started doing a great job. We're applying computational biology to every health problem we have. The next 30 years, you will see miracles, mostly coming from the US, not completely. The whole world's a part of this. And it's underway now. There's an anti-malaria vaccine that mostly works. Doesn't affect us that much, but product and part of the American health research system. I mean, it's astonishing in the last 5 years what we've seen. Don't you just throw up your hands and say, I give up? This is an age of miracles when it comes to health.
I don't give up. Tyler, if all those trends come through over the next 30 years, I will come back to this stage and switch my side on it.
But
for now, the United States has the lowest life expectancy of any rich country.
But we also have Neuralink, is what Tyler said.
You mentioned diabetes. We don't see Ozempic showing up in life expectancy yet because it's a new thing for obesity. It's going to have a major impact, maybe more than AI will, right? It's a complete game changer. It mostly works. Cheaper versions of it, better versions are coming all the time. This is not my speculation. This is reality. It's because of innovativeness. We are fixing a lot of these problems.
I want to read something that Bhaskar wrote in The Guardian in 2013, and here was the provocative headline. The American dream rewards few, enslaves millions. Here's part of what you wrote. It's not that everyone can be successful. It's that anyone can be successful. A few token children of the meritocracy keep the rest glued to their machines. Not all in chains, some by choice. And I think that raises a really important question that's come up tonight, which is the American dream fundamentally about opportunity, which is your side, or outcome, which is broadly how I hear your side? In other words, is the American dream about the ceiling or the floor? Is it about an opportunity for someone like Sergey Brin or Elon Musk to make billions, or is it about the average person getting the basics? I want to put that question to both sides.
I think it's more than the basics. I think it's the opportunity to advance from the beginnings you have to make good on the promise of hard work and sacrifice and make advancement. I think that for some Americans, that's the case. It is alive. But I think for many, many Americans, it's not. I mean, you could just look around at the utter apathy of politicians to the fact that, for example, in America, you're 8 times as likely to be murdered than if you lived in Germany. And I picked Germany, not a more extreme example, like Denmark, for instance, but Germany, a big industrial country with large degrees of immigration, plenty of inequality, but it's just certain things that we just take for granted. Yes, you live in America. If you're born in certain neighborhoods, you just might end up dead. And what's the solution from policy elites? Well, the right's not going to pay attention to you, and huge portions of the left will support defunding police and less social services to you. That's the reality of living in America for a lot of people. And it's no wonder why people reject politics, why they look towards people like Donald Trump, why they look towards just apathy or despair. And this is what it means for them to be American. They're not thinking about this land as boundless opportunities. And I think we need to instill that spirit. I think we need to change policies and change conditions for that to happen.
But a lot of people sort of on your broad side of the argument talk about disparity as being the big problem. If we were all richer, but the disparity was bigger, would that be a problem for your side?
So just to jump in, I did briefly mention that this point, because I think obviously we need more wealth. Growth is great. Every generation has to some degree more opportunity than the last at a base level because of economic growth. But if you go back, like in that study said, you go back to the levels of growth we had in the 1950s, that takes us to absolute mobility of 62%, basically, still a coin flip, whether or not you're going to have a better outcome than your parents, compared to if you even maintain our existing levels of growth, and that gets us to, but you distribute income differently, that gets us to 82%. So I think the study says if you want to just do it by growth rates alone to get back to the old levels of inequality, you would have to have GDP growth every year of 6%, which seems very difficult for a highly developed country to hit.
It would be a problem for us if we were in a scenario where 35-year-olds could easily afford a home in the United States. And we didn't have the worst life expectancy of any rich country, and Americans were basically doing well by birth rate and marriage.
But there were still trillionaires.
But there were still billionaires. If we were in a situation where most Americans were thriving, but inequality was growing, that would be a really uncomfortable argument for us. It's not the situation we're in. We're in a situation where most Americans are struggling, particularly Americans without a 4-year college degree who are still a majority. That's how we have all these statistics. It's why Americans are so grouchy. Most people aren't as fortunate as we are. And we have high inequality. So it's not the reality is not an either or. I absolutely agree with you, Barry. In a society where you have both mass prosperity and rising inequality, the kind of argument about what the American dream is becomes harder. I would actually argue in that society the American dream would be alive and well.
I also think, the height of the ceiling is the distinctively American part of the American dream. People of many nations dream of having enough. They dream of having security. They dream of having basic safety. And, I think libertarians are the best Rawlsians. We believe our policies help the people who are the least well off. But if we're looking for what is the American dream, it's this high capacity. It's this idea that people can kind of shape their futures, try a thing, fail at a thing, succeed at a thing. And I think it's really poisonous to say the American dream is our institutions. The American dream is something that we get handed to us. The American dream is, unfortunately or fortunately, y'all. It's us. It's just what Americans believe is possible for themselves. And that's not a thing that shows up in those numbers.
So the American dream is about freedom to choose.
And it's about freedom to choose crazy stuff. I mean, I really can't emphasize that enough. Like, everyone can choose what they're gonna have for lunch, provided there is, in fact, food in their grocery stores, but we can choose a lot more.
Katherine, I wanna read something that you wrote. Here's stuck out to me. A married couple with kids in America can absolutely live in a small house with a single, less reliable car and fewer labor-saving conveniences and luxuries while sending maybe one of their kids to college, and they can do it on a single income. But this is not what most people choose. Talk to a person, and I imagine there are several in this audience, who hear that and think, what is she smoking? And she's a libertarian, so she is probably smoking many things.
To that question.
But like, we ran a piece today in the Free Press interviewing all of these people in Gen Z who are busting their ass and can barely afford to make ends meet, many college educated. So talk to the person who hears that and says, what is she talking about? I'm doing everything, and everything is still out of reach for me.
Yeah, so this is like a very tricky argument to make, and I appreciate that just as you found a thing that Bhaskar wished he had not published, probably, that you found—
It's my job.
That you found it tough, because this is me rebutting the other opponents Tyler and I could have had for this debate, right? We could have had a pair of sort of social conservatives who are like, the American dream is dead because my wife won't make me a sandwich.
That's how I feel, you know what I mean?
And the fact is that vision, that sort of 1950s inflected vision of the American dream is very powerful. That is what a lot of people mean when they say the American dream is dead. And what we systematically underestimate is what that life was really like. So the Gen Zs who are saying, I can't make ends meet, well, their ends include an iPhone. Their ends include a lot of great stuff that was either just unavailable at any price or not considered part of kind of basic subsistence. And to me, this is a happy story. This is a story of the fact that people want more, and they can reasonably expect more, and they can dream of getting even more, and it's almost like the American dream is alive and well.
Speaking of choosing crazy things, Tyler, you've argued that to some extent Americans are actually being held back by their complacency and their risk aversion. Can you explain that to us a little bit more?
I think there are a lot of people in any country who just want to live very normal lives, not be very mobile, and get through the day and have a stable existence. I would prefer at the margin that we were less that way and more risk-taking, but if I compare us to other countries, there can be some very poor countries with a lot of risk-taking, such as India, a lot of entrepreneurship there. But compared to the other wealthy countries, we are still by far the least complacent and the most innovative. And one part of the dream, which Katherine alluded to, if you want to change the world, if that is your dream, it's only one dream of many, but if that is your dream, I've never heard anyone say that anywhere other than the United States was the place to go. No one has ever said, move to Canada, which is a wonderful, beautiful country, right? But no one says that. And that's a big part of it. I would prefer we do more, but we're number one. And there's, again, this paucity of responses from the other side. Like, where is it better? When was it better? It's just a lot of wishing for things.
I can answer. In terms of how long you want to live, it's better in every other rich country in the world.
The overall package, you have voted with your feet.
Well, I was born in this country.
But would you leave
Other
it?
places would take you.
No.
But why?
Because this is where I want to live. But I think because I think this is the best country in the world. But wait a second. But wait a second. Wait a second. I think this is the best country in the world, in part because we have a history of fighting for a better future for people. And I don't think it's a good enough future to tell people, you know, you have a crappy car and you can't afford to live in the school district you want to, but your crappy car is better than your parents' crappy car was, right? That isn't how people define it in their own lives, right? The way they define the American dream is progress. And it is true that in terms of material things like the phone and the size of your TV, things are better, definitely, than they were 40 years ago. But when you look at what people actually value, they value not having their kids addicted to opioids. They value life expectancy. They value having intact families. They value not having relatives who are locked up. They value not having their children go to school and fear that they're going to get shot at school. And so you look at all of these things, and you see that in many areas of life, progress has clearly slowed. In some areas, it's stagnated. We are well behind other countries. I don't want to live anywhere else, right? But the idea of the American dream is not stop criticizing it or leave. The idea of the American dream is make this country the best that it can be. And when so many of our citizens say, my life isn't good enough, I don't think we should tell them you're wrong. I think we should try to make their lives better.
I want to touch briefly on what we're probably going to hear in the other debate tonight, which is, Harris has not been very vocal, let's say, about her policy ideas. But one thing she has proposed is price controls, which she brands as sort of the antidote to price gouging, I believe. But I think the Washington Post columnist Katherine Mangu-Ward said, when your opponent calls you a communist, maybe don't propose price controls, which I thought was a good headline. Now, you guys, libertarian in politics, but no big fans of Donald Trump, can we just do a quick round robin on economically who's going to take us closer to the American dream and the health of it, Kamala or Trump?
Well, I think Biden's policies, which Harris was a part of, took us much closer in that it did restore far more manufacturing jobs than Trump did. We actually had a coherent national industrial policy. We had, in too small doses, we had a lot of the right medicine from Biden, and I would hope that Harris and a Democratic Congress could do more.
David?
I think the price gouging stuff is silly. I don't think it's as bad as the critics say.
Do you think it's sincere, though?
I don't think it's sincere. I don't think it's sincere.
I know that's a weird question to ask in Washington.
In the following way.
Whether or not a politician is sincere.
It's not sincere in this way. I don't think Kamala Harris and her economic advisors actually believe price gouging is the main reason grocery prices are high. I don't actually think they're going to implement price controls. I think it's something that sort of pulls pretty well. She basically has taken it from Bob Casey. One of the things, the Pennsylvania senator running for re-election, one of the things that's actually really useful is just go onto YouTube and watch the ads in House and Senate races. As soon as I saw Kamala talk about the price gouging stuff, I knew it was just the Bob Casey Pennsylvania stuff. It's not sincere. It's not a great idea. It's not going to make a big difference. It's probably not going to happen.
Harris or Trump, just economically, forgetting everything else, which one takes us closer to the American dream?
Division of powers as understood by the founding fathers. And I have great
nice
faith
dodge,
in that.
Tyler. Catherine.
Yeah, I'm the most die-hard, dead-ender, double hater you will ever meet.
Does that mean you're voting for Jill Stein in this election?
It would be deeply foolhardy to look to either of those people to restore or strengthen the American dream in any way, shape, or form. There is such a thing as good policy. There is such a thing as better and worse policy. I simply don't think whatever's going to happen on that debate stage tonight gives us information one way or the other.
Let's pop up to 30,000 feet or maybe even higher, because I think what are the stakes of this conversation? I think the stakes of this conversation are that, in history, economic and social uncertainty leads to very bad things, like civil war, something that people have been talking about for a few years now. What are the stakes, David, and really all of you, for the degraded American dream? Where do you think, if things don't get better, where do we wind up?
I mean, I think we would all agree, even if the four of us would put quite different explanations of why. This is an angry country right now. It's really an angry country in many ways. I mean, that's how we get these kind of politics. That's how we get Donald Trump. I think even his fans would acknowledge that. And I absolutely agree, Barry. Angry countries often don't do that well. They don't tend to invent great things, right? They don't tend to lead the world. And so a big part of the reason that I am so concerned about the state of the American dream is I want to live in a world where the United States is the most powerful country in the world, right? There's only one other option right now, and it's China. I definitely don't want that, right? And I don't see any other options I want. And I think it is very difficult for us to maintain our status as the most powerful, influential country in the world, as a beacon of freedom where our relatives and ancestors have been able to come and say things and not get arrested for it. I think it's very difficult to have that happen when people are so frustrated with the condition in their own lives that they produce an angry politics that I think everyone in this auditorium tonight would lament.
Anyone else? You think it's alive and well?
Look at what people actually do with their lives. How many Americans leave this country? Some do, remarkably few. Some retire in Latin America for climate or cheaper rent. But it's just astonishing whether you look at who wants to come here, what they would bid for a passport, what they would do, how few leave. I mean, that's the ultimate bottom line. What are you doing with your life? And I would say on this stage, we have 5 yes votes for our side of the resolution, and quite a few more in the audience. And that really is the bottom line. David, other countries would love to have you. I could help. I don't want you to go.
For people like David and us, this is a great country, and there's no reason for us to leave. But for people without college degrees, for particularly white and black working class Americans, this is not really the best country in terms of outcomes. And these are the people that so many people from DC all the way to Boston, I don't know what's going on in Maine, maybe them too, don't care about. Honestly do not care about, and you see it in every single little bit of mainstream politics. And why wouldn't you respond to someone like Donald Trump, even for his lip service, because at least you're getting something from him?
That's an important point. For people who have 4-year college degrees, I'm guessing that's most of us, life expectancy actually looks quite similar in this country to life expectancy in other countries. It's people who lack 4-year college degrees, who probably aren't taking Ozempic at this point, for whom the life expectancy trends are so dark. And I think it's really important to remember that that is the dominant experience in this country right now, and it's why we have the angry politics that we do.
Okay.
Keep in mind intergenerational mobility for non-immigrant Americans only. The Raj Chetty paper, since 1970, it has not gone down at all. That's Raj Chetty. You cited him. Now, yes, mobility was higher in the 1920s when so many people were close to zero that it was easy to rise and fall in relative terms. But for 55 years, intergenerational mobility has been the same. So you're talking about lower earners, people without college degrees, as if they're just getting screwed out of something that was once their birthright. And you mentioned manufacturing jobs. Today, service sector jobs pay better on average. It's a good thing most of those jobs are gone. The socialists criticized those jobs and hated them. And now we have higher paying service sector jobs on average. So you need to be actually looking at the past, real numbers. When you do that, you will find that a lot of the problems you're talking about are anecdotal. Yes, anecdotes matter, not everyone flourishes, but in fact, in the numbers, median household income, consumption levels, American dream is clearly alive and well.
Raj Chetty would absolutely disagree with that summary of the study, that mobility has not declined for 55 years.
Yep. Okay, let's
read you.
Because I'm getting all of you out here in time for the other debate. Let's put 2 minutes on the clock.
We find that percentile rank-based measures.
Make it part of the closing. Stand right up.
Use it for your closing
Tyler,
statement.
get up. 2 minutes on the clock. We're going to do closing statements in the opposite order, starting with Tyler, who's going to read from this paper abstract.
We find that percentile rank-based measures of intergenerational mobility have remained extremely stable for the 1971 to 1993 birth cohorts. So that means that from 1971 to the present day, intergenerational mobility, and look at the 2023 AER piece, which goes through the same data and arrives at the same conclusion and is not cited in your book because your book came out before that piece. So the two main pieces, same conclusion. But my final statement is this. The American dream is many things to many people. Part of what it is a diversity of venues and ways in which you can complain about the American dream. And that's part of it. I think we should welcome that. It's how we keep the American dream alive and well. So I would just close by saying we should welcome the criticism, take it seriously, and think of it as the next set of things we need to do to keep the American dream alive and well. Thank you all.
Well, Raj Chetty's publicist better be sending us gift baskets. Okay, I love the United States, and I'm not just saying that in case Harris just bombs in this debate. And Trump is reelected. My parents came from Trinidad and Tobago the year before I was born, and they and my 4 siblings eventually became citizens. My parents struggled for many years to get established in this country, but it's offered us everything: safety, belonging, opportunity. Yet for many Americans, particularly those who've been in this country for generations, building the foundations of American prosperity that I benefited from, the American dream is not alive and well. We don't need to go through debated measures of social mobility or poverty to prove that. They're telling us that through not only how they respond to polls directly on that question, but through the politicians they increasingly support and the political views they increasingly hold. The question isn't if the American dream is in distress, it's how we go about fixing it. I think we need policies primarily rooted in improving the lives of working class people, particularly working class native-born Americans. Policies that prevent excessive red tape and continue to allow the economy to grow while broadly redistributing wealth from the rich to the poor, and in turn creating greater state support for healthcare, childcare, housing, and jobs training. We could shift the funding of existing social goods like K-12 education from just being funded by property taxes to federal funding when possible. We could pursue policies that support the right to form unions and have unions as key partners in a new era of American growth. We could expand policies like those started in the Biden administration to revitalize American manufacturing. And I think you'll see, once you do all these things, Americans will have more stable home lives, they'll be less lonely, more of us will be married, more of us will stay married more, we'll raise children in healthier environments. Eventually, we'll even have a less polarized country with a more united sense of civic identity, rooted not just in our individuality, but our shared labor and responsibility for rebuilding the conditions, generations after generations, that will actually have a thriving American dream.
Thank you. I'm currently suffering from the debate equivalent of Sunday scaries. Like, we're right at the end of the fun part, and now we have to go do another debate that's going to totally suck. And listen, politics really sucks right now, and that's influencing a lot of people's answers to these general questions about how they feel about opportunities and how things are going in this country. But politics is not everything. And we are not living in a world that we are just given by our institutions, by our politicians, by people who hold power. The American dream is about individuals choosing to be architects of their own lives. This is manifestly a possibility for us all. We've danced around the question of how to think about immigrants in this conversation all night. And while it is, of course, laudable to think about this very specific subset that Bhaskar is obsessed with of American-born people without college degrees, and I want them to thrive and do well, I think the image I want to leave you with is at the southern border, a mother holding her toddler with the concertina wire over her and a piece of cardboard to shield her, trying desperately to get into this country. And she walked through another country first and didn't stop there. It's not about what she was leaving. It's about what she was going toward. And it's the thing that only we have that is so alive and well that she would take these risks, and that many of our ancestors in this room took the same risk for. I just can't think about her and believe with one fiber of my being that the American dream is anything other than alive and well.
First of all, thank you to all of you for coming out tonight when there's obviously something else going on. Thank you to Barry and the Free Press for doing this. Thank you to my partner, and thank you particularly to Tyler and Katherine. This has been so much fun, if only all debates were like this one. I think, as you've already heard me say, I love this country. I have my own immigrant origin story in this country. My grandfather arrived here February 1940. He had escaped first a concentration camp in Paris where they locked up people who were Austrian or German nationals, which my grandfather was. And then, of course, he escaped Europe before the Nazis arrived in France, and he got here, and my family has lived here ever since. I think this is the greatest country in the world. I think it's the country with the most impressive record in modern history. We've defeated fascism, we've defeated communism, we've sent a man to the moon, we invented the internet. And how have we done that? We have done that by being realistic about the challenges we face and the problems we face and not wishing them away, looking clearly at them. And the challenges we face today, that for most Americans, the American dream is not alive and well. Is it alive? Yes. I would vote yes for that resolution. Is it alive and well? No, it is not. That is how we have the lowest life expectancy of any rich country. That is why so many Americans say the country is on the wrong track. That is why so many Americans are lonely. That is why so many measures of social well-being do not look that good. Here's what I would ask you to imagine. Tyler and Katherine, they are free market conservatives. They would tell us we should trust people. We should listen to what people are saying. So I want you to imagine something. I want you to imagine the entire country, the United States tonight, was voting on the resolution, the American dream is alive and well. How do you think most Americans would answer that question? Thanks so much for coming out.
Thanks, David. Okay. It's the fun part. You take out your phone again. And on the screen, there's going to be a number, and I'm going to this side so everyone can see it. This time, you're going to text vote 2, and you are going to text the letter A to vote with Tyler and Katherine. Yes, the American dream is alive and well. And you are going to text B if you were swayed by the other side of this argument. No, the David and Bhaskar position. Okay, as you're going to do that, so A is this side, B is that side. As we tabulate the votes, we want to take a few minutes to get some questions from the audience, because it takes a second to do this. Yes, person who raised her hand. Yes, it's never a woman first, so I'm doing it, yes.
Hello. You didn't talk enough about why people aren't having as many babies as they would like to, so I'd like to hear about that.
Great, let's do a quick, Tyler, why are people not having babies? You're good at fast answers to things.
I think most of the constraint is coming from the side of women who now have unprecedented opportunities to become educated and have careers. A big part of the American dream, clearly improving a lot for 51% of our country. We need to rearrange other ways we do things so that is once again compatible with a higher birth rate. We haven't done that yet. We need to do it. I personally am not sure exactly how to do it. Fortunately, this is a country a lot of immigrants want to come to, and we will manage to continue having a growing population in most plausible scenarios.
Pink sweater, and then we'll go to that lovely gentleman in the jacket.
Two very quick questions. Why hasn't anyone talked about the effects of Citizens United on the political races and on politics and elections in this country? And second, you've talked a lot about immigration and about immigrants, but no one's talked about black people in this country. And I would like to hear more about that.
Bhaskar did.
Yeah, I did, but.
But that's fair to say. Like we covered a lot of categories of people who are manifestly better off, and the hardest case remains native-born Black Americans who are not well served by many of our existing public policies. I think you can see in the numbers when you poll people about the American dream, Black Americans do say they are less likely to say that they believe in the American dream and that they believe it's accessible to them. That is a fair question, and we probably should have talked about it.
The gaps remain horrific. I think part of the reason we make the case that we do is many of the trends that used to be concentrated among native-born Black Americans have spread to native-born Americans of all races.
Man in the jacket, who happens to be Nico Perino, who's an executive vice president at FIRE, the sponsor of tonight's debate. And guys, before Nico answers this planted question, the others were not, and I promise maybe Citizens United, a topic for another debate, I would love for the whole FIRE team to stand up. Greg, whoever else is here. Those friendly faces, probably several drinks in, will be in the lobby after this, and they would love to meet you. Yes, Nico.
So we do free speech work, so you'll forgive me if I ask a question that has been brought up briefly about our rights and liberties, including freedom of speech. You know, many of our forebears came to this continent before it was America because of religious persecution. That was their American dream before there was America. So I would love to hear from David and Bhaskar what you think of rights and liberties and how they play into the American dream.
Yeah. And obviously some people came to this country because of religious persecution after it was America, right? It's been a continual line. Can you just be a little bit more specific? What kind of, are you thinking about government stuff? Are you thinking about private sector stuff?
I'm thinking about freedom of speech, due process, religious liberty. People still come to this country for those values, right? For those things embodied in our Bill of Rights. So how do you think the state of those issues, those values, those principles speaks to the American dream today?
I think the kind of legal formal state of most of those rights is pretty strong, although I would commend, not just because he is my boss, the essay that A.G. Sulzberger recently wrote in the Washington Post about the threats to press freedoms around the world and potentially in the United States. So I certainly think some of those freedoms might be at risk. What I worry much more about, and I know you do too, and Barry does too, is the sort of chilling effect in which people are told, if you have that belief, you are a bad person. That belief is out of bounds. We're not going to have it here. And I think the state of free speech in the kind of private sector is actually substantially weaker than it was 10 or 20 years ago. And quite frankly, substantially weaker than I ever expected it to be in the United States of America.
And that is a wonderful plug for the free press. Okay. It's time to see who changed the most minds and who the winning team of tonight's debate is. Oh my God! Wow! By movement of 1%, I gotta give it to Katherine and Tyler, Bhaskar Sunkara, David Leanhart, Katherine Mangu-Ward, Tyler Cowen. Thank you, and thank you all so much.
Happy to call it a draw.
That's hilarious.
As an economist, confidence interval, it's a draw.